And good day, everybody, and welcome to the professors at McMurry University. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
I'm Don Frazier, and our guest today is Tim Dunn, our colleague over in the psychology department. How does that
right.
make you feel? It's a psychology joke.
There's so many ways to handle this. First of all, I'm delighted that Tim Dunn is here.
I am too.
Just absolutely delighted. And secondly, it seems to be sweater day here on the professors.
Because it's cold outside.
It's cold outside. So anyway, Tim Dunn, glad you're here.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here as well.
Now, you're a professor of psychology.
That's correct.
And you're going to explain to us what psychology is, what do you study, what do you teach, that sort of stuff. But let's start by learning a little bit about you.
Right, okay.
Where are you from?
I am from a little town in East Texas, Kemp, Texas.
Kemp? What county is that in?
That is in Kaufman County.
Oh, okay.
About an hour from the Metroplex. Town of about 1,000 people. So, yeah, not a lot going on there in Kemp. Yeah.
Are there trees there, or is it in the Blackland Prairie country?
There's a few trees, right?
Okay.
We're getting closer to the taller trees, but not quite
Okay.
to the piney woods or anything. So, yeah.
So you grew up in a little town.
Yes, I did.
In East Texas.
Uh-huh.
And how did that lead you to psychology?
Well,
where'd you go to school and all that?
Yeah. I came to Abilene, I guess, about 25 years ago now. And the plan was to study criminal justice, believe it or not. That was my plan. So I ended up at Hardin-Simmons. I wanted to go to a small Christian school. Wanted to be a police officer, an investigator, figure people out. Yes.
Were you influenced by some TV show or something?
No. That was way before those TV shows. Absolutely. So, and you're laughing at that is the common response I get when I say that I wanted to be.
I think you would be great.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because you look at people and you stare at them, and it feels like you're being probed.
Right.
So, like a good psychologist.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Whereas Don just wants to read my letters. That's what historians do.
Yeah.
Especially if you're dead. You never read your dead letters.
Right. Yeah, well, it was pretty soon. I think the first semester I started seeing the real side of criminology and what that's like in the real world, and thought, this is not for me.
It's pretty dark, I suspect.
And it's pretty dark. Yeah, it is. And I thought, that's not quite where I think I'm going. And so I jumped around, one of those students that jumped around to several different degree options there for a couple of years, and they were all people related, And what I started to figure out was I'm just interested in people. I want to help other people. I want to figure them out. And it went into my junior year that I found psychology, and I was like, this is it. This is why I was interested in criminology, of like, why do people do these things, And so that's what brought me to psychology, figuring people out and then wanting to make a difference for them. Some of that's connected to my background as well, growing up, and some things, and I've been adopted twice. That's something some people don't know about me.
Oh, wow.
My longer story than for this program.
Yeah, but that's
and so, but yeah.
Adopted twice is kind of a cool
Well,
story.
let's change the focus of the program.
That's right.
Let's put you on the couch now.
That time you were left at the bus stop with, $2.
No, let's not talk about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Sorry about bringing those terrible memories up
Yeah.
for you.
Well, but yeah, that's what brought me to psychology. It just kind of came alive. It's just interesting to figure out why people do what they do, particularly in relationships. And so that's kind of been what got me into psychology, focused on people.
So you went to Hardin-Simmons.
Yes, correct.
Graduated from there.
I did.
And then where'd you get your doctorate? Your PhD.
Yeah, I got my PhD at Texas Tech just recently, actually. That was quite a journey. And so, but, went to graduate school before that for counseling, and the kind people at Hardin-Simmons let me into the graduate school. And so that's when I started to become a counselor. Also went on and did my divinity degree as well.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Now he knows the mind of God, too.
And
theology, yes.
Wow.
Yes. And so those are
how did that come about? What was the
still helping people?
Yeah, still helping people, but
Well, some of this aspect of feeling like helping others is a calling, and something that how do I help others? And lots of times when you talk with people, at first it was just, I'm going to be a Christian counselor. I'm going to help people from that perspective. And then learning, I didn't quite understand what that really meant, right? And so the idea was, maybe I'll work in a church. Maybe I'll counsel out of a church. That'll be something I do. And so I would like to know more about God, about the way he views people as well.
Mm-hmm.
While that's connected in terms of those issues of philosophy and mind and body and soul, and where's all that connected. So all those philosophical kind of nature of people, nature of mankind, issues are connected there. Nature of God, my place in the world, and so
well, and people are created in the image of God, so there
are.
may be some connections there.
There may be a few connections there, right? So those just seem to go together. So while I was working on my counseling licensures, I was working on that second master's as well, and then starting my counseling practice during that time.
So you were in private practice for a while.
That's right. I've been in private practice, for 16 years now.
Wow.
I still actually do that on the side as well.
So you see patients as well as teach students.
That's correct. That's right. I try not to get those confused.
So there may be a lot of similarities.
But sometimes.
Can we make referrals to you? I mean, there's several of our colleagues that I think could use some professional help.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
Well,
You might have seen them on the YouTube videos.
No comments.
Might
No
even see them
comment.
hosting a show.
Yeah.
Right.
Not might, but definitely. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh gosh, I don't
So
know how
we
to
have
go from
issues
there.
here,
Yeah,
obviously.
no,
Clearly we have
that's
issues.
understandable, and we can have a segment where we work that out. I mean, I'm a marriage and family counselor, so we can.
Well, we're not exactly married, but we may have
Well,
been dating
yeah,
for a while.
Right. I can work with that.
Good.
Yeah. So when going back, I was mostly in private practice for years and years. Was able to build my own practice, manage the partnership, go into business there, manage the employees.
Here in town, though?
Yes, here in town.
Okay.
See clients as well. And at some point, I wanted to go back, and I thought got to teach a little bit as an adjunct, teaching introductory classes in psychology, and thought, man, this is fun, and really enjoy the interaction with students and
Sure.
and the things you learn from them, and I think probably the professors that have been here a while, if you're honest, a lot of it's stuff you've learned over the years in classes with students as you're talking through these issues, and they've taught you, and you've added things to.
I learned all
to your
about the Urban
repertoire.
Dictionary in my
Oh,
class.
is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Really? I
Yeah.
had to look
Not
that
every,
up.
Yeah, I don't think you should. Not every word that's out there actually means what it says it means.
Yeah.
There's second meanings apparently in the Urban Dictionary. But
Be very
please.
careful. Be very careful.
Yeah, very careful.
So, but yeah, that kind of whet my appetite for teaching, and I thought, what I really miss is some of those professors that had an impact on me personally, and that continued interaction. Not that I'm just showing up teaching a class, but I can be on campus. They can stop by, and I can interact with them at this time in their life,
Yeah.
and the identity issues they're going through and things like that. So that's really what pushed me to go back and get a doctorate and think about doing this more full time.
So what is your doctoral research on?
It is on attachment theory and how that impacts the ways we relate to people and the ways we form our identity. Yeah.
Why is he looking at me? Is there some attachment thing going on here?
That's probably not related to that.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
There's other issues.
He's
Maybe
probably
other-
he could just be just looking at you. That could be it.
Quit reading in. Quit projecting onto me.
Yeah.
So, briefly, we got 3 minutes before we take a break.
Briefly, right?
Attachment theory.
Okay.
And
Briefly in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
and we'll talk about it when we come
Yeah,
back.
we'll unpack
okay.
it.
Okay. Well, it starts in childhood. The idea is that you develop this close bond as a child, as an infant, with your earliest caregiver, and some of that's based on survival, but it's out of this closeness and connection to this earliest caregiver that you develop this bond, and the nature of that bond can be different based on how that person treats you, if they're responsive to you, depending on how they meet your needs when you're a child, and based on how they treat you, how responsive they are to you. You form a way of relating to them based on that, based on the expectations of are they going to be there for you or not. It even leads into your creating this mental model of how you come to think about other people, how you come to think about yourself, and if you're worthy of love and acceptance, if people will be there for you, can you trust others? And then that's what develops in childhood. We all develop a template, and then we use that template to begin to relate to other people, peers, close relationships, romantic relationships in adulthood. So a lot of my research is on the adult attachment side and looking at the typical templates that form with people and how they've come to relate to someone in a certain way and how that might often trip them up, in
Interesting.
relationships. Yeah.
In my class today, student presentation season in my class,
Right.
one had read Mein Kampf.
Okay.
And
Okay.
no one had read a autobiography of Lucky Luciano. And so one's
The mobster.
the mobster. So we've got one that's a National
That's-
Socialist godfather. The
Incredible.
other one's a mafia
Godfather.
godfather. But they both had issues that you're describing,
Yes, they did.
the childhood issues.
With
Yes, they did.
their mother, typically,
Well, and their dad.
and their dads
Yeah.
too.
And so it's interesting that you should mention that because it's laying on top of my synapses today.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I used the word synapse.
Nice psychological word there. I
Yeah,
like
thank
that.
you.
Now, we do have to take a break in
Okay.
half a minute, but when we come back, can you tell us, like, how do you do research on this? I mean, do you sit there and you just talk to people? I mean, I'm just really curious how you guys
Yeah.
go about doing
Yeah,
it.
certainly. We
I'm
can
Yeah,
talk
your
about that.
methodology.
Yeah,
and all
your
that sort of
methodology.
stuff.
I mean,
Absolutely, yeah. That will be terribly interesting for people listening to methodology, right?
well,
That-
I know
No,
you're
we'll-
going to
okay,
make it
okay.
interesting.
Yeah, we'll make it
Okay,
interesting.
we'll see what we can do. Okay,
Right, and then we'll
absolutely.
need to know what you do with the psychology degree if you're an undergraduate.
Okay.
But we'll talk
Wonderful,
about that.
wonderful.
Yeah, talk about that after this break.
Bear Leader Tours. Where will Bear Leader Tours take you? Everywhere. Paris, Rouge, Trier, battlefields, Pearl Harbor, Pacific beaches, Louisiana, Guadalcanal, Rome. Join the adventure.
www.mcwhinney.org.
And we're back. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
I'm Don Frazier. You're watching The Professors from McMurry University, and we're talking today with Tim Dunn, who's in the psychology department just down the hall from us.
Us, and newly minted PhD, as
Yeah.
they say. You got it just a couple months ago?
Right, back in August. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Now we're talking about attachment theory,
Yes.
and you have done your research
Mhm.
on attachment theory. So I'm
Correct.
just curious, how do you do research on attachment theory?
Right. There's quite a split in the field, so I'll just tell you very briefly. But some people prefer to do highly structured interviews. So there's a set of say 20 questions.
That you just ask a bunch of people?
Right. You ask them those questions, and there's follow-up prompts as well for that. And these have been researched over many years of kind of trying to make this somewhat valid and reliable in terms of what we're finding out, and to try to put people into a typology type, an attachment type. So some people think that's the way we should be doing it only with the children and adults. Other people use survey research. And so, just validated instruments that have been used over the course of time and have been proven to be reliable and valid instruments that we can use and find out someone's attachment style. So we used a survey.
You used a survey.
in our research as well, right? So,
Do you have any questions you want to
Yeah, I
ask
was about
us?
to say,
oh man, I
we
don't
can.
know.
I'm interested in my attachment style.
Yeah,
You're
me too.
Interested in that
Because I'm the
absolutely.
youngest of 10 kids, man. So there's no telling what that played in.
And I'm the third oldest of 10 kids.
Okay.
So it's sort of weird here.
Clearly, we need attention.
Yes.
Did you say you're the oldest of 10?
I'm the youngest.
Youngest of
And
10,
I'm the
the
third
third
oldest.
oldest.
He's the
Okay.
middle of a
The
squad.
oldest,
Okay.
oldest male.
Okay.
7 sisters.
Now, all of that makes a difference too when it comes to sibling research and birth order research, right?
Yes.
It's male-female aspect. There's some research that shows it starts over every 3 kids. So you have the typical oldest child, middle child, youngest child, and then it kind of, you see some of the characteristics start over again when you have that many children. If you think about ages,
Mhm.
go along, you kind of start over, in a way. I'm the youngest of 4 in my adopted family. So, but I'm the oldest of 3 in my biological family. So
Oh, wow.
I spent about half my childhood with my biological family and the remaining 10 years at home with my adoptive family. So I've got some qualities of both.
Let's say you could go either way.
Well,
Can you toggle it?
Oh, today I'm going to
Yeah.
be this.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
yeah.
This class.
Use
this
what you
way.
need to. You don't feel like leading as a first child. Absolutely, just be the baby a little bit and just
So
enjoy.
what are you doing
being
right
doted
now?
on.
Which
And
one
when
are you
they're
Yeah,
doing?
which one? Yeah.
Oh, there's
Which Tim Dunn are we talking to?
There's no telling, man. Yeah, we all get into the field to deal with ourselves, right?
Sure,
to counsel
sure.
ourselves, right?
So what are some different attachment types.
Okay.
Boy, this could get uncomfortable, Don.
Yeah.
Or reaffirming or something.
You know, from the most basic, you can talk about secure or insecure attachment styles. And so a secure attachment style would be someone who's trusting in relationships, who can enter relationships and be open and appropriately. You know, some people go over the top. Some people don't do enough. And so this is someone that's pretty comfortable entering relationships, understands realistically that sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. It's not always just about me. There's another person here. But someone you would say is fairly adjusted when it comes to relating to other people, be secure in who they are and connecting to other people. So that's on sort of the positive end. A couple of the insecure types would be an avoidant attachment style, would be someone who, just like it sounds, you're a little pulled away from other people. And so maybe you like to spend a little more time alone, be more withdrawn from others. But it's more than being introverted. You're doing that as a way to, you're suspicious of others, worried that they might hurt you in some way, distrustful of others. So a lot of times you pull away and stay away from others because you know, hey, I can't always count on people to be there for me. And so this is a way to protect myself, right? Some avoidant people would be what you would think of like the typical withdrawn person. It's hard to get close to, doesn't have a lot of friends. But some withdrawn people actually have tons of friends. They're very extroverted. They seem to enjoy being around others, but it's always kind of shallow. Like when you try to get deeper and have a deeper conversation with them, you just can't get past that initial surface level. Or I've got a couple of friends like this who I've known them for years. You know, so I've got some from college, and we'll have these deep conversations, for a couple hours, and then I won't hear from them for months.
Yeah.
It's like I got a little too close there, and they got to pull back. So that's a couple of profiles of the avoidant. The other attachment style, typical insecure attachment style, is anxious attachment, or it's often called anxious ambivalent attachment. And the idea, these are these people that it's not so much suspiciousness of others, but hey, I may not be worthy. Someone might not want me. And so they're constantly looking for, they're preoccupied with relationships, with the nature of relationships. They always want reassurance. The person that we talk about being high maintenance in relationship would fit in this category of just, hey, you didn't text me back. I texted you 3 times. What's going on? Like,
you unfollowed me on Pinstaface.
Pinstaface. I like that. This is wonderful. Yeah. And so they just get very frustrated about those sorts of things. And so they need to be very close. They need the reassurance constantly. They need a lot of time with this person. Sometimes they'll just focus in a romantic relationship, just go all in very, very early and kind of stop some of their other relationships as well and just be with that person all the time. But sometimes there's also some ambivalence of, I'm not sure if this person really cares about me, loves me, those sorts of things. So that constant reassurance, it's never enough for that person, right? So those are the basic ones.
Is there a sense of what is the best of those types?
Yeah, is there a right answer
here?
Yeah.
And then the second question would be, what percent of the population is of each of these types?
Okay. Great questions. Yes, there's tons of
He's
research
affirming me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's because you need constant affirmation. I just heard that.
Yeah.
And you got a thumbs up from me on Facebook.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, there's literally thousands of articles on attachment theory and about the outcomes of attachment theory. Obviously, as you probably understand, a secure attachment style is going to lead to more relationship satisfaction and commitment and quality in romantic relationships later on, even in friendships. And so some of the other insecure types, are have more difficulties in relationships, certainly. And in terms of getting closeness, intimacy, satisfaction, those sorts of things. But pretty consistent in terms of your second question, Paul, about percentages. Usually about, I think, somewhere between 50 and 55, 60% of the population usually is somewhere around that secure attachment, believe it or not. Avoidant is somewhere in that 25% range, 25 to 30. And then you have usually somewhere in the 12 to 18% range is the anxious ambivalent style. So kind of gives you a little bit of idea of the typical population. And that's we see those combinations and percentages pretty pretty much the
Pretty
last 25
consistently.
years.
So that's
pretty
what you
consistent,
found
right?
in your research too.
Yeah,
right?
very similar to what supporting all the other research about that. Yeah, very similar in the group that we looked at.
So what are those numbers again? 50, 25, and 12?
Well, those don't add up. So yeah, but like pretty much.
Well, I'm
50,
assuming that the gap is full of
between
sociopaths.
right, exactly. Somewhere about 50 to 60, you know,
Okay.
and then in the 25, 28 range of avoidant, and then or 22 even, and then usually about 15 to 20% of the anxious. So,
Okay.
and you see those numbers move around, obviously.
Sure.
For certainly, but usually you'll have people fall in one of those three categories.
And that's in an American population, or is that something
Correct.
that's worldwide?
Well, yeah, some of the major researchers, there's a couple of major researchers that do a lot of work in Israel, the university there. And so this is in other populations. There's another researcher in Holland as well. So populations around the world, absolutely.
So it's a
Those
human
seem to
thing,
hold
not
true.
an American thing.
Yeah,
It's
all right.
absolutely.
All
All right, we got to take a break.
Okay.
And we'll continue on with this fascinating conversation right after this.
History has become one of the most fought-over battlegrounds in terms of shifting people's views and opinions about their country. In response to this, we have decided to launch a website called Go To History that will become your home for clear-eyed history content. Our objective is to put history out there, free of agendas, and allow you, the viewers, to decide what you believe and decide how to interpret this information. With experienced professors such as Dr. Don Frazier and Dr. Stephen Hardin teaching courses and creating agenda-free content for students and just plain history enthusiasts, the content of Go To History is vastly informative and unbiased.
History people, it's Phil Collins here. I am just giving a shout out to a couple of guys that you're going to be hearing from. And they're good friends of mine, but they're also incredibly knowledgeable historians. Dr. Donald Frazier and Dr. Stephen Hardin. Both great friends of mine, both helped me out with my book on the Alamo. And two guys, if you don't know much about history, these are the first two guys you should go to. Okay, what they don't know isn't worth knowing. Don Frazier, Steve Hardin, I hope you enjoy their presentations.
My name is Ebony Williams, a history major at McMurry University, and I love the layout of the Go To website. I mean, it is singularly built from the ground up with user convenience in mind. Every study available is within a single Courses tab, with each lesson having a single page for each of its individual videos, text, visuals, and quizzes, all at easy grasp. This is most definitely history made simple.
Please log on to www.gotohistory.com.
And we're back. Welcome to the professors here at McMurry University in Abilene, Texas. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
And I'm Don Frazier, and this is Tim Dunn.
Hey, Tim.
Hey.
We're so glad you're here, and
Oh,
we're
thanks.
talking about attachment theory.
Yes,
And you explain the different types.
correct.
And now Don had a question about social media.
Right.
Well, there seems to be this sort of craving that's driven by social media to be followed and not unfollowed and thumbs up, and they got the little emoticons that you can put on there. And some people are just absolutely on social media all the time, and it seems to almost be the tiller that is steering their ship.
Right.
And there's been a case here recently of someone who was on social media, and political opponents used it against them. And when you go and take a look at the posts that they made, they were on the surface not particularly ferocious, but there was sort of I guess there was a yearning in those posts for attention. It's just weird.
You might be reading a lot into it.
Maybe it might have just been an offhand remark, but
Yeah, but they were interpreted by certain people
as being racist.
as being racist and being offensive.
Yeah. So, I mean, that begs the question for me on why I post them in the first place. And it just seemed like they were trying to be funny.
Yeah.
But why do you try to be funny on social
Facebook
media?
or
Yeah.
social media, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may go deeper than even just the attachment, just the need to belong. and need to connect with other people, right? And so attachment and how you've developed that connection could be impactful. Certainly what you're describing is people that seem to need it. They need some reassurance. They need someone to tell them their thoughts are valid, would be more of that potential anxious, attachment style as well.
Okay.
And this is a different form of communication as well. That's, most of the research is more so about connecting with people in deeper relationships where you're face to face. Well, now you're talking about online. You're talking about just words.
Yeah, and hiding behind technology.
Right, which, you lose the nonverbals. You lose the tone of voice. You lose over 90% of communication when you're just communicating with words.
Well, that you can apply that to text too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you lose 90% of the correct grammar and punctuation.
that as well. That as well. Especially in a texted paper.
Oh, right? Absolutely. Texted paper. Exactly right.
Right. But yeah, I think that's, so I think there's some bigger issues going on, than just that. But I think this is an area where people are looking for that connection in a different way. And maybe it is a place of protection as well. So they can put that out there and somebody's going to like their stuff. Somebody is going to say wonderful things about them, right? Even if they get a lot of negative feedback.
Sure.
There will be somebody that likes them if they put that out there, versus some ways that may be less intimidating than one-on-one. Because if that person rejects me, well, now I got to go find somebody else.
Recently I was involved in an incident. There was
Tell us more.
Yeah, there was a Wikipedia page that I've told you about.
Yes,
this.
You have.
Is it appropriate to bring up in this context, do you think? All right. So this Wikipedia page was for a museum that I've worked with in the past, and this particular museum is a Civil War museum.
Okay.
All right. So Civil War is a hot topic right now, and statues are being toppled, and mobs are being formed, and all sorts of things. And this particular museum's Wikipedia page was not particularly affirming of this museum. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the museum's asking me, how come people can put a Wikipedia page up about our institution that just runs it into the ground? They're trolling us. Mm-hmm. And so I started researching on who was, actually doing that Wikipedia page, because you can do that. Right. And it turns out it's this 70-plus-year-old forcibly retired professor and convicted pedophile. Wow. Who does nothing but troll Confederate and Civil War-related Wikipedia pages. And he's authored more than 1,200. I mean, he's been cited as the hero of the Republic by Wikipedia. And you Google his name, and up pops his mugshot from Florida for being a registered sex offender. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just asking myself, what kind of guy spends his entire, dotage building Wikipedia pages to troll, Confederate-related museums and monuments and topics? Yeah. It just struck me as being bizarre.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a case study.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that is a strange case study, to be sure. But I mean, once I started pulling that string, it finally led all the way to Florida. And I'm like, holy smoke, this is just odd. And this guy was a former professor, but not in history. He was in language studies and was the general editor of the Encyclopedia of Homosexuality. So clearly some issues. Okay. But how does that jump over into anti-Confederate stuff?
There's some pieces of the story we don't have,
obviously. Exactly. Clearly we don't.
That leads then to a question. Okay. You have these types of affection theory, and then you have people who are your patients. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you translate the theory into actually working with the patient? I mean, supposing this guy was a patient of yours, you're not realizing that's not the case or anything.
Refer him to somebody else.
Refer him to somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, but how do you go about doing that? And what is the goal that you would have for a patient?
Okay. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about attachment theory from its origins is John Bowlby, the developer of the theory, took multiple theories together to craft that, and he was also a therapist. So he was looking for Not just let's find a theory that describes people and how they're all messed up, but then how do we then learn to fix this and help people, you know? And so what I love about his theory is this is about a template that's formed. It's not about something that's unchangeable. And he said these attachment issues, one of his famous quotes, affect you from the cradle to the grave. You know, so they're going to be active throughout your lifetime. However, you can have experiences later in life that start to rewrite that template for you. So let's say you were someone who grew up in a family where you developed an avoidant attachment based on your relationship with your parents. But then as you start to get in relationship with others, in friendships and peer relationships, maybe even a romantic relationship that spanned time, that was much more appropriate, and someone was able to meet those needs and let you realize, hey, it's safe to come near to me. You're not going to get hurt all the time, and you learn to develop some trust for someone. You can actually develop a secure relationship, say with your romantic partner, and still have that avoidant attachment, you know, connection with, say, one of your parents based on what happened there. So there is the capacity to develop different types of relationships with different people based on those specific relationships. And so that's a little of what I was pulling out in some of my research for my dissertation as well, is that's not focused on as much in the field anymore. It's more this idea that you have one type and you're that way with everybody. But that's not the case for everyone. That's not where the origins of the theory were. So when I'm working with a couple, for instance, I'm not necessarily thinking about let's move them from insecure to secure. I'm much more interested in having them learn about their story, because I find with couples in relationships, a lot of their difficulties really aren't about the spouse. It gets blamed on the spouse. The spouse blames their issues on them, but a lot of it is stuff that's from prior relationships. It's from maybe parents growing up, some mom issues, some dad issues. It's from, you know, relationships, friendships where they were hurt, earlier romantic relationships, and they're bringing all of that attachment history into this. And so helping people realize where some of that is getting triggered by interactions with their spouse, getting people to be aware of that is probably the main key of that's my template. That doesn't mean I have to continue to act out of that template, right? That may be my primal response at some point. It's just natural for me. But learning to regulate those emotions and realize, hey, that's what's happening. I'm feeling, hurt in this way, or there's some danger here based on this aspect of the relationship. So it's not so much about trying to suddenly make them secure, but more so about them recognizing that and then being able to share that with one another and talk about that and realize that, hey, that's what's going on with my spouse sometimes when she does this, when he does this, is maybe they're going to that place. It's not that they're, upset with me in this way, but maybe something has triggered something for them. And so what do they need in that moment, right? And so that's much more what I'm interested in. And maybe then out of that growth, we create a relationship that's much more secure and trusting and healthy. So,
is there anybody who's totally healthy mentally?
Well,
I mean, is that possible, or does everybody have
battle
issues?
honors?
Well,
battle scars.
Yeah, battle scars, battle honors, however you want to call them.
Yeah, well, and there's two different questions there, I think. For me, I would answer that with maybe more than two, but I would say, yes, everyone has had some suffering, some woundedness, some brokenness that impacts the way they view things, the way they interpret and perceive, and the way they interact with people. And so, but just because you have that doesn't mean that you're unhealthy. Becoming aware of that, right, and how that impacts me, and then there's ways to do something healthy with that still. So just because you're broken doesn't mean you're unhealthy.
Sounds like the essence of Christianity.
There you go.
Yeah,
now, when we come back, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to ask you how this applies to students of psychology and what kind of work can they do after they study with you.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, because, recently it's been kind of beat up in the press as being a useless undergraduate degree. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that right after this message.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Statehouse Press, a nonprofit publisher of quality books. Statehouse Press and the McMurry Foundation Press are part of the Texas A&M University Press Consortium, which handles retail distribution for several small but distinguished publishers. Our entire list of offerings, with pictures, summaries, prices, and easy online ordering, is available in our section of the consortium website. Statehouse Press is proud of its reputation for high standards of scholarship and readability. In addition to this, we at Statehouse Press have recruited the talents of individuals such as Phil Collins on his book, The Alamo and Beyond, We release not only texana by contemporary authors, but reprints of classic accounts of Texas life and history otherwise inaccessible to the public. Our book list also incorporates the publications of the McMurry Foundation Press, specializing in the history of the Old South and the Civil War. We strive with our titles to make history accessible to as many readers as possible. To accomplish this task, we have recruited some of America's leading historians, as well as bright new scholars. We believe firmly in narrative history, in telling a good story, and in telling it well, without losing sight of the people who've made history and the events that changed a nation.
For questions or business inquiries, please visit the Texas Book Consortium at www.tamupress.com.
When you support McMurry History Education Group, you also support the many young workers who operate and maintain the company's digital operations. These are dedicated university students who handle many things such as filming, recording, and editing content for McMurry, as well as cultivate the layout and structure of McMurry's various websites, including its associated channel on YouTube. We are a nonprofit organization that exists from donations from interested persons and history enthusiasts alike. Donations enable our students to obtain a higher education, job training, and career bolstering skills. If you would like to donate, please visit us at www.mcmurry.org and click on our About Us tab to learn more.
This portion of the show is reserved for advertisements. If you are interested in filling this portion with ads for your business, please call 325-793-4686 or email director@tfhcc.com.
And we're back. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
And I'm Don Frazier.
And this is Dr. Tim Dunn of the Psychology Department at McMurry University. And Tim, we've talked about attachment theory. We've talked about its application for patients.
Correct.
But in the end, you're a professor.
Correct.
And so you have students who want to major in psychology. What can they do with a degree? And as Don said before, there's been some bad press about psychology degrees. And
yeah, that's the one thing that gives historians hope, is that we're always placed higher than psychology in terms of utility of the degree. So,
yeah. By the way, political science is always well above that. So.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah.
So don't take this from me, man.
Okay, so I'm in third. Okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Thanks for making
welcome
that clear.
Welcome to be on the show.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, welcome to liberal arts.
Okay, wonderful.
So what can someone do?
Well, let me start with this. When students come to me, and often is the case, people get interested in psychology once they're already here, and they maybe weren't planning that degree, but they
took an intro course.
Watched
the beard.
It's really interesting. Exactly right. And so they'll come and say, I'm interested in this. And I said, well, tell me about why are you interested? And I find two things typically. If people have these two things, that it may lead them into psychology. If they find trying to figure out why people do what they do and are really interested in people and what's happening and trying to figure them out, what makes them tick, that usually is present. And then coupled with that is a passion to help people then to hey, I'm going to take that knowledge that I gain in this field and then apply it to create and change for people, because there's a lot of suffering people, right? And then people that don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so if I can learn that and then teach someone that, then maybe that helps them. So tons of areas you could go in terms of jobs. Certainly most people think of, well, you get a bachelor's, then you got to go on and get a master's degree to be a counselor. And to be a counselor, a professional counselor or marriage and family therapist, you would need a master's degree because you'll need that, and then you'll need a year and a half, 2 years of supervised experience, because you're going to put you out there, with the shingle that says I can help people, and so we want to make sure people we're putting out there know what they're doing, and they're not going to harm people.
So you would, as part of the training, you'd actually have a supervisor who's in there with you.
Correct. Most graduate schools, you in psychology, if you're going for counseling, you maybe have the first semester will be classes, and that second semester you're starting to see clients in the clinic, and maybe they're recording you, maybe there's some live supervision, but you've got your professors who are watching you, reviewing those cases. You're meeting with them weekly to talk about cases and learn what to do. in that. So you've got those couple of years of seeing clients, and even when you're done, you take your state licensing exams, and you've got your pre-license, so to speak. You've still got to be in supervision with somebody for the next 3,000 hours of interaction with clients.
3,000
Yeah.
hours.
You know what is occurring to me? It might just be cheaper to buy a bar, and then you can practice counseling.
A pub.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Or
And you hang your shingle out there, the Eagle and Child, and
right, or cut hair.
That's another good
place
yeah.
to do it
Go
as well.
get your barber's license.
Yeah, but yeah, it takes a while, and that's to be licensed as a counselor, to be able to bill insurance, have your own practice, those sorts of things.
Sure.
But there's lots of things you can do even with a bachelor's degree, and I'll just give you an example of Abilene, Texas. Town of 100,000 people, a small town to lots, but some things you could do immediately out of your degree at McMurry would be go work with Child Protective Services as a caseworker, and or an investigator. So you're working with families as you're getting those calls from those kids, making sure they're safe, getting them the treatment they need in the community. Very similar job would be Adult Protective Services, where you're doing that for elderly people who are being abused, and maybe work up in that place. There's several foster care agencies in town where you could immediately get in as a caseworker for those places, where you're doing evaluations of foster homes, you're doing evaluations of foster children, and trying to make placements with those people. It could be very rewarding as well. A couple of the nonprofits we have in town have a foster care agency. They also have, say, a youth shelter when foster children are in between placements. And so those places will have counselors. They will have people that are interacting with them and taking care of them throughout the day. As well. You can work in probation or parole as a caseworker as well. That's another place you could go with a psychology degree. Most people also think of psychiatric clinics. And, a lot of times you're going to have way advanced degrees to be a psychiatrist or a counselor, but there are roles even there, intake specialist as well, group interacting counselors, things like that, rehab therapists. Most places have a mental health and mental retardation center, focused on, an adult unit and a child unit that's focused on helping people with some major psychological disorders, schizophrenia, major depression, and bipolar. And so that's a job you can get right out of school as well. So I've gone with several others, but there's plenty you can do with this degree. It's quite broad. It is a degree that allows you it's a broad degree that then enables you to specialize as you learn more about people and what you want to do. When I went to graduate school, wasn't really interested in relationships and couples as much, but that was a huge focus of the program that I was admitted to. So
you got interested.
I got interested, and partly was I found, hey, I'm good at this. This is what I'm called to do. I saw people change quickly. I had people come in and get out of therapy quickly, which should be the job in therapy, is moving people back into their normal lives. And so then it became my passion. It's what I'm good at. It's what I'm called to do. It's what I want to do. And so I think that's sometimes what happens in psychology. You get in, you learn a little bit about people, and then as you start to narrow down over time, maybe you get out there and get some experience in a certain area, and then you decide, hey, I want to go in that direction as a result. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Because you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Okay. A psychologist is going to have their PhD in psychology, and so they are going to have some advanced training and give psychological testing. And Dr. Sneller in our department is a psychologist, right? It's an extra license. You have to take a licensing exam for that. And again, you can write psychiatric reports on people after giving them an entire makeup. That's not something you can do at a master's level. You have to have that PhD. A psychiatrist is going to also be a medical doctor. They're going to have all that advanced training as a medical doctor, but also have the advanced training in psychology. So they're going to focus more on, as people come in, we are looking at what's happening in the brain, providing medication to help them with their difficulties. Say someone with schizophrenia who's seeing people or hearing voices that aren't there, and that's because of imbalances in their brain. We're going to give them medication that balances that out so that they don't have those symptoms anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got less than a minute.
Okay.
Final thoughts for our audience about your field and why people should major in it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll just go back a little to what I said. If you've got an interest, and people, what makes them tick, and
because there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people.
There's
right?
people everywhere.
And what's wonderful is it's a field where you you don't really know what you're going to experience from day to day
Yeah,
with people,
that's a
right?
fact.
And so if you like some variety, you like being challenged, to use some of those skills of figuring things out, and then you really care about people and want to help them, then I think this is a field for you.
All right. Well, Dr.
That's-
Tim Dunn,
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean,
Thank you very much.
That kind of unpacks the whole field. Very nicely done. And I
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
captivated by the beard. So, class dismissed.
It happens.